Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and Last Epoch Season 2 Hype Week continues with more details on what to get excited about for Season 2 Tombs of the Erased, which begins April 17th. Be sure to have checked out part 1 of this video series, which I posted yesterday, which covers some of the new endgame offerings, as well as the rework to the Sentinel class and the sexy new Heartseeker skill, which I'm planning to run in Season 2. So yesterday's and today's Hype Week updates covered endgame, balance, and itemization, plus quality of life. We're going to tackle all of that in today's video. And we're going to thank EHG for sponsoring this series. All right, let's start by diving into the endgame crafting additions. We are getting 6 new crafting options in Season 2. Now, already many people were saying that Last Epoch has their favorite crafting system in an action RPG. This is the big picture of how the crafting system works. You take items, you break them down into components, and then you use those components to craft onto new items. So let's say you got a pair of boots that dropped. They're garbage boots, but they got one good affix on them, maybe some move speed. You shatter that item, and that's going to produce shards, crafting shards. These shards are going to randomly have maybe some of those affixes from the original item. Maybe you get lucky and you get that move speed shard. Now you take a good pair of boots, maybe the ones that you're wearing, and as long as they have an empty affix slot, you can craft that move speed onto your boots. That's a very simplified version. There's a lot more nuance and complexity that goes in as you go deeper in, but that's the core fundamental part of how it works. Now, these 6 new crafting systems will be tied to new echo types. Those are the maps. We spoke about this in yesterday's video. You're going to run into new maps, and these maps will have at the end of them, or somewhere, maybe in the middle of them, you're going to run into a crafting interface that is specific to each of one of the following 6 crafting methods that we're going to go over. And the first one here is set shattering. Now, I've always said that Last Epoch, that 11th hour games, the devs of Last Epoch, they are one of the best, if not the best devs at coming up with ingenious solutions to long-standing issues or problems in the genre. And here's a problem with set items, for instance. Set items from dating back to the Diablo 2 days, which we kind of see the same issue appear in Last Epoch. And that's that by the time you complete a set, you generally have outgrown the utility of that set. So they said, okay, how can we still have sets in the game, but make them actually useful? Enter set shattering. In an Echo, you can find a Forge of Shattering. This is a system where you're going to bring a set item, and it's going to break down a set item into set affix shards. These are affix shards that will have 2 affixes from the set item that you broke down. Then you can take those set shards and you can imprint them, you can craft them onto an item that has an available affix slot, and it's going to become a reforged set item. Now, this item is considered a part of that set for purposes of getting set bonuses. And any piece of gear can only have 1 set affix on it, so you can't get cute with weird shenanigans to try to cheat the system. I can't think of a game that has done set items perfectly. I really love the idea of set items. I loved it from the Diablo 2 days. But in Diablo 2, like I said, by the time you complete a set, it's useless to you. Only a couple of sets are really good in endgame. Maybe you can get a set that's good for leveling an alt, but that's kind of the best that you can do. In Diablo 3, sets became just too powerful. They used up too many itemization slots. They defined the endgame. It was too much. I'm hoping that now with these changes, sets are going to feel just right in Last Epoch. All right, crafting system number 2, we got idle enchanting. We spoke about this in yesterday's video. You're going to be able to do this in tombs and cemeteries. You're going to take your idols and you'll be able to craft onto them enchanted affixes, as well as something called Weaver's Touch. We explained what Weaver's Will was in yesterday's video. Weaver's Touch is basically the same thing, but for idols, where an idol will have a certain amount of Weaver's Touch on it, and then as you are getting kills with the idol equipped, that Weaver's Touch will get depleted and is going to upgrade existing enchanted affixes or add new enchanted affixes, if you have available slots, onto that idol. In tombs, you can enchant 1 time, and in cemeteries, you can enchant up to 4 times. And you can also re-roll existing enchanted affixes. That would count as 1 enchant use. Crafting system number 3, we got attribute swapping. You're a dex build, and you just found an amazing item, but it's got strength on it. Boom. Find the right echo. Now you can swap that dex, or that strength, into dex, rather. Strength, Dex, Intel, and Attunement are the 4 attributes that you're able to swap to and from. Number 4, experimental crafting. Normally, you can only get experimental affixes on items dropped by exiled mages. Well, now you go find where the exiled mages live. You can get to their crafting machine and you can now just direct imprint onto items of your choosing instead of getting the random drop. Number 5, re-rolling unique items. Now, technically it's re-rolling uniques, legendaries, as well as Weaver's Will items. For this, you need 2 copies of the item you want to work with. You're going to sacrifice 1 item, and by sacrificing that item, that's going to allow you to re-roll all the affixes on the other item. That includes the implicits. So if you're trying to get a really well-rolled version of a unique, this gives you reason to stack up multiple copies of that unique. Once you find this particular echo, boom, go and consume them, and, hope to get a better result. And then the 6th new crafting option lets you re-roll legendary crafting potential. It sounds like it's going to be a rare echo, but once you find it, you're going to have a little crafting window. You slap in items with legendary potential on them. They have to have at least 1, and then they're going to randomly get re-rolled. Their legendary potential, rather, will get re-rolled, and you hope and pray that it's going to be higher. Because if it is not higher, then the item is consumed. This is a slam. This is a gamble. And if the item is consumed, you are instead given a consolation prize of a rare shard. Now, in addition to that, we're also getting new crafting materials, namely a few new runes. Now, what are runes exactly? We explained what the crafting system was before. Runes are a way to act upon items via crafting. So the classic example is the Rune of Shattering. The Rune of Shattering is how you break down an item in order to get shards. A Rune of Creation would make a duplicate of an item. A Rune of Discovery would take an item with empty affix slots and randomly add affixes into those slots. Well, one of the new runes is going to be the Rune of Weaving. Now you're going to use this with an item that has Weaver's Will or Weaver's Touch on it. Normally, Weaver's Will and Weaver's Touch, as we described, they're going to upgrade while you have this equipped and you're killing monsters. What if you don't want to wait? What if this is a weapon and you don't want to swap to using a worse weapon than the one you already have, having to wait to get all the Weaver's Will out of it? Well, boom, slam it with this Rune of Weaving, and that's going to consume the Weaver's Will or Weaver's Touch and treat it as leveling up as normal. Next, we got the Rune of Havoc. Okay. Affixes on items come in different tiers. A tier 1 affix is the worst, and they go higher and higher, and a tier of an affix determines the minimum and maximum potential roll within that affix. So again, higher is better. Maybe you get an item that has an affix that you want and an affix that you don't want, and the affix that you don't want has a really high tier, and the affix that you do want has a low tier. Well, a Rune of Havoc is going to randomly reshuffle the tiers of the affixes. It doesn't change the affixes, but it shuffles around the tiers randomly, so you're going to hope that it's going to take one of the high tiers and put it on the affix that you do want and care about. Then there's the Rune of Redemption. Okay, you get an item. It's got a bunch of high-tier affixes. You're like, oh, that's awesome. And then you see the affixes are garbage for your build, and you're like, oh no, that's a shame. Enter Rune of Redemption. It's going to re-roll what the affixes are. It keeps the tier, but it changes the affix randomly into something else. Cross your fingers that it's what you want. So overall, we are getting a huge expansion to the crafting system, more ways for us to alter our items, more ways for us to be given agency and to be given consumables and ways to make use of items and not be like, oh, well, this is useless, this is bricked. New opportunities and potential for creative and fun things that we can do to try to get closer and closer to the items that we want through both deterministic and kind of fun slamming RNG means. Now, outside of all that, we're also getting some balance changes. Boss Ward, for instance, that's getting nerfed on enemies. Not as many bosses are going to have Ward on them, and the Ward itself is taking a bit of a hit. Ward's also getting nerfed for players too. It's been dominating the meta way too much, so we're taking a hit to Ward. We're getting buffs to health regeneration and added health. They also found enemy dot damage. Damage over time was too strong. They're just nerfing it across the board by 15%. They're also having the bonus damage to damage over time that enemies get via corruption. They're taking a look at the top builds. They are nerfing those skills. We're talking about mana stacking static orb. We're talking about sacrifice with high minion counts. Falcon builds, particularly dive bomb. It was one of my favorites back in the day. Potion ballista, but they are In exchange, buffing a ton of skills. Overall, you can expect a refresh to the meta and a lot of new and exciting builds to try out. Alright, now we'll dive into some of the quality of life improvements, starting with Mastery Respecialization. This has been something people have been asking for a while. Devs are finally bringing it to us. In last Epoch, you start with a basic class. Eventually, you pick a Mastery, a kind of a specialization class. Previously, you could not change that decision. Now, for a cost, you will be able to. They're also giving us more deterministic crafting options. So when you're spending your legendary potential to upgrade a unique item, you'll now be able to actually select one affix from an exalted item in order to guarantee it going over to the unique. They're giving us a dedicated inventory to store our dungeon keys. Wonderful. We have a ton of stash space, but this is just more convenient. They're also adding 2 dungeon key charms. These are things that you can consume at the entrance of a dungeon to modify that dungeon. And the first is the Scale Charm, which is going to drastically increase the number of loot lizards that you find in the dungeon. And then there's the Portal Charm that'll just beeline you straight to the boss fight. And even if you go through the dungeon the old-fashioned way, they've improved dungeon layouts and made them smaller, so it's not going to take as long to get to the boss. You will also now be able to spend extra dungeon keys to respawn in the dungeon where you died. And for those who didn't know, you could sort of campaign skip or skip parts of the campaign via a dungeon leveling path. Starting in Season 2, they're actually adding rewards for completing the dungeons during the campaign. Every dungeon boss will give you 2 passive points and 1 idle slot unlock. Overall, controller support is being improved. They're adding auto-storing of those crafting shards. Instead of when you pick up a shard, it goes into your inventory and then you click a button to yeet it into the ephemeral hammer space that keeps it. It's just going to go straight into the storage. Another really neat concept they're adding is the death vacuum. So there's a bunch of loot on the ground and you're about to die and you're scrambling to pick up what loot you can because, you know, when you die, all that loot's going to be gone. Well, now, if you die and there's loot on your screen around your body, that loot is going to get yeeted back into town with you. No more feels bad moments of seeing a great drop. You die, and that drop is lost. When we're talking about Endgame, Monolith of Fate, you will now share on your alts your progress along the main monolith, so you don't have to re-unlock all the basic monolith, and there's even more quality of life changes beyond that. And that's going to wrap up this video, folks, but I encourage you to sound off in the comments with what you are most excited about for Last Epoch Season 2, starting April 17th. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more ARPG content.